everyone. My name is Erin Meyer. I am the Sustainable Food Programs Coordinator at UC Merced. Happy Nutrition Month, everyone. We are so happy to be here in honor of Nutrition Month. We are featuring Jen Hobbs. She'll talk about her bio, but she is a fantastic support in our community, professor of nutrition as well, and instructor of nutrition, and she's just great. So we're excited to have her here. I'm going to give it over to Guillermo to also introduce himself. Hello.
Hi, Erin. Hello, everyone. I'm Guillermo Ortiz. I'm the Sustainability and Diversity Educational Programs Manager here at the Office of Sustainability at UC Merced. I'm just so glad, Jen, you could join us, and I look forward to the really great discussion. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
All right, Jen, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am a registered dietitian nutritionist, and as Erin mentioned, I'm currently a full-time instructor at Merced College. I teach foods and nutrition courses. So I teach basic nutrition, sports nutrition, food safety, and also basic culinary courses there. So I'm pretty busy working full-time, and then also with the switch to online, I've been training instructors on how to teach online. I've been teaching online for about 5 years now. So it's a whole different world out there, as all of you have probably figured that out by now with Zoom and having to adapt everything. So I've been pretty busy with that and have not been doing my private practice anymore. I have just a couple of clients that I've kept on, but I've really moved away from that in the last year. So the last 10 years, I had a private practice. I did part-time, and I saw people for weight loss and wellness and gastric bypass surgery clearance, and just different reasons that people would want to come and see a dietitian. So that was a wonderful, wonderful experience. I love working one-on-one with people. And also, I also love teaching nutrition because I'm very passionate about it, and I just love sharing it with everyone. And I met Erin when I was out at the UC. I worked there for a short amount of time as their campus dietitian for a couple of years. And again, I enjoyed that environment as well, working with the students in their health centers. So prior to that, I've been in Merced for about 19 years, and I've worked with public health in the field of childhood obesity, and it's just been a very interesting road as a dietitian. It's not the one that I envisioned when I first became a dietitian. I thought I was going to be doing something a little differently, but the field changes and it evolves, and it's very exciting. And I've just been so glad to kind of been able to ride with it and just move along and change courses as different opportunities have presented themselves to me.
Fantastic. Right off the bat, I mean, I have a million questions for you. This is my area also of interest and expertise, sustainable foods and everything. And I thought about for a while becoming an RDN, but then took more of the food waste kind of conjecture and or juncture rather. So I was speaking with an intern the other day, and we were talking about the RD path. And so my question is, if people are interested in this field, what are the steps that they would need to take to become a registered dietitian?
Great question. Preferably, you would know that when you're going into college to do your 4-year, and you would seek out an institution that has a dietetics program in it. It's very specific to get your undergraduate degree in nutrition and dietetics. Having said that, I'm sorry, UC Merced doesn't offer that, so nothing against UC Merced, but that would be the best path because you have to get certain coursework done in order to be eligible to get an internship, and the internship is required for 1 year of study, and then after that, you have to take an exam. Now, in 2024, the requirements are going to change and a master's degree will be required. Up until now, it has been optional. So with that, the bachelor's program will feed right into an internship that will be put together with a master's program. So if somebody already has a degree in a different field, they can still become a dietitian. They have to go back and complete some additional coursework. And most of the dietetics programs are offered at the CSUs in California, as well as many private institutions. There are only two UCs that offer it, and that's Berkeley and UC Davis. So if you already have a bachelor's degree and you're looking to get another one, then you have to do a couple of different things to do that. So I won't spend too much time on that, but there is a path. It's just a little bit of a crooked path to get there. And at Merced College, I saw something in the chat from Melinda. Melinda's at Merced College, and we offer an AST in nutrition. So that's an associate degree of transfer. You can do all of your not all of your prerequisites, but many of your prerequisites like microbiology and organic chemistry and many of your nutrition classes prior to going into a 4-year.
Fantastic. So are there any close CSUs or other UCs that have a program that people could look into, just if you know off the top of your head? I know the ones in Colorado, because there's a few specific schools in Colorado you can attend where I'm from. But in California, what are some options people might have?
Good question. Our closest one is Fresno State. I'm slightly biased because that's where I did my undergraduate, and I have 2 kids there doing their work there. And of course, I met my husband, who I just noticed is on this call as well. So go dogs. But anyways, yeah, so Fresno State would be the closest, as well as Sacramento State, San Jose State, and of course, UC Davis. Those would be some of the closest options, I think. And Cal Poly.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, so I know I have a ton of questions, but I'm going to open up the floor to others because I can talk to Jen whenever I want. I can just call her up.
That's right.
Does anyone have any questions for Jen at this time? And you can just unmute yourself. Oh yeah, go ahead, Guillermo.
Yeah, hi Jen, this is Guillermo. I was wondering what inspired you to kind of pursue your track in terms of education? Did you always know that you wanted to kind of go down that path, or what was the process to kind of figure out what was the path that you wanted to take?
Okay, interesting question. I always was interested in nutrition. I didn't really apply myself in high school, to be perfectly honest, and my science grades were not very high. So I had a counselor in high school that told me that I really should not consider nutrition. So I went a different path. I actually was a theater arts major. And then I decided, I had a friend who was a nutrition major, and she told me, you just take one science class at a time. And I said, well, I could do that. And it turns out I'm actually pretty good in science. I just didn't know it. So that's how I changed my path, and I switched over. And I did just take one science class at a time, and it was doable. And at the time, my father was having some health problems related to diet. So I think that piqued my interest even more.
And the other thing I would want to follow up that, oh wait, actually, I see that Jeanette raised her hand. Let me let you.
Oh, okay, thanks. Hi, I am Jeanette Warner. I work with UC Cooperative Extension and Communications, and I'm actually also a Fresno State grad, and my daughter's at UC Merced in graduate school.
Oh, good, that's great.
Yeah, but the reason I wanted to ask a question, I've been, as I said, working with Cooperative Extension for actually about 30 years now. And there've always been, it's a lot of nutrition education, especially for lower income families. And I've kind of watched all this nutrition education happen, all this federal funds that are being used for nutrition education, all the information that we're gaining with science over the 30 years, but yet the obesity percentages keep growing. And I wonder if you have a thought for a solution to the problem.
That's a great question, Jeanette. And I did work with the childhood obesity program I was talking about, actually was with the cooperative extension that I worked with here in Merced. And we, our approach was to get into the schools and educate kids and try to get to their families with introducing them to fruits and vegetables. That was sort of our main message, to try to get kids away from junk food. And so we did pour all of our energy and our money into education. And I think that is so important. And I know that the UC Cooperative Extension does such an excellent job with the nutritional education that they provide. But I think the hard part is changing habits. And that is something that I've noticed just in working with people one-on-one is, what you need to do, but putting that into action is very difficult. And even though it sounds like it's easy and it makes sense, making it work for you or your family, I think, is the biggest barrier. And I think that's where we fall short, because I don't think we do enough to work with families to figure out, sure, they need healthier food, but how are they going to get it? How are they going to find time to prepare it when it's not something that they're used to doing? So I would say probably the behavior changes is really an area that I think we could focus more on. Does that answer your question?
I have a question, but I am worried now because I had signed up for this to ask you some stuff. I know it wasn't labeled Ask Me Anything, but I am worried that my question might be more personal and more my own fitness goals. And I don't know if that's the appropriate platform. I'm not, is this the appropriate space though? I just want to make sure I'm not like, because I've
Ask me anything.
Okay. I just realized questions about education and community, and then I'm like, oh, I want to know more about me, but okay. So I just kind of wanted your advice a little bit on, I'm changing gears a little bit personally. I recently, within the last couple of years, I've lost about 80 pounds. And so my goal has been purely weight loss and just, increasing my fitness and changing the habits, as you said. And so, but I'm trying to shift gears to gaining more muscle, but also continuing to lose a little bit of weight still. And I know that that's a little bit of a challenge. I've been doing more strength training lately. And so I'm finding myself hungrier. And so, I'm feeling like I am definitely getting stronger with the weight training, but my weight is like staying the same. And so I know that obviously muscle weighs more, but like, I'm just feeling like I need to eat more because of that. And so I just wasn't sure if you had any like suggestions or advice on that.
Good question. So there's a couple of things in there. First, I would look at what your goal is, because I really hate to pin a goal on a number on a scale for a number of reasons, because that doesn't tell us the whole story. Okay, that doesn't tell me how strong you are. It doesn't tell me how you feel about yourself, or if you can fit into the clothes that you like to wear. All it tells me is what your weight is on the scale. And anybody who's ever stepped on a scale, especially the ladies in the room, know that it will change day to day, hour by hour. So that can be a little bit frustrating. So if you leave that away and you did not have a scale to measure, I would challenge you, Sarah, how do you measure your success or your progress?
Is that an actual question you want me to answer?
Okay. If you did not use a scale to measure, how would you measure your progress?
I mean, I definitely try to eat whole foods in general. So I feel like if I have reduced the amount of times I eat out, and and then I'm cooking most of my meals, I think if majority of that is the case, then I feel pretty good about that. But
you sort of track what you're eating and make sure that you're hitting.
I do track my calories, and I'm trying to increase my protein. I just think that I'm having a hard time knowing like what is the balance between the macros.
Well, and I think another shift would be also, how else could you measure how well you're doing? Looking at different measurements, like your progress with workout as you get stronger. And then also, I mean, you can measuring body fat can also be a little tough, but depending on the machine that you use, but maybe even measurements just to see, am I making the progress I want?
Okay.
And in terms of, are you meeting your macros? You can use any type of apps or things like that, even computer programs, to see how you're doing with that. But just know that, unless you know your exact portion size, there can be, of course, some errors in that. So just making sure that you're making the progress that way, I think, and taking a lot of the emphasis off the scale sometimes can be a way.
Right. And I definitely been trying to do that. And I'm wondering though, if I'm easing up too much on that, because I am trying to focus more on exercising nearly every day. And I can tell that I am getting stronger and I'm seeing growth in my workouts. But then I think I'm starting to tell myself, don't worry too much about what you're eating because you need the extra fuel. But then am I going too far the other way and then I'm actually hurting myself? So it's just trying to find that
balance. Yeah. And just knowing that, yes, you need more when you're working out, but I would look closer at your timing. And are you eating enough before you work out so you can have a really good workout? And then are you eating after so that you're replenishing your stores? But those types of foods should be healthy choices as well.
Right, definitely. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hold on a second. Sorry, I'm being summoned in the other room by a child. Okay.
No worries. All right. Anyone else have questions? I hope. Got plenty of time.
I think there was one in the chat. Melinda said that she had a salt tooth, but since COVID, it's been crazy and she can polish off a whole bag of chips in one sitting. Is this stress or a medical issue? Well, Melinda, without knowing your medical history, I would probably say it's stress, because you are not the first person that has told me this during COVID. And when we are stressed, everyone's going to reach for something different. But if you tend to be a sweet tooth or a salt tooth, you're going to go for those items. And wanting to eat the whole thing is that feeling of fullness and making yourself feel better. Ultra processed foods like salty foods and sweet foods, our brains are wired. When we get that, it is almost like getting a drug. And so it really does make you feel better until you get to the end of the bag and then you realize you've consumed an entire bag. And then a little bit later, your stomach realizes what you've done and then you really don't feel very good. So my recommendation would be changing up your environment and not having the availability of it. Chances are, if you don't have a bag of chips at home and you really want chips, you're probably not going to get in the car and go drive to get chips. You might, but if it's 10 o'clock at night, you might not. So keeping it away, it's very difficult for me to have potato chips in the house because they do taste really good. And I don't normally keep them, but when everybody came home for COVID, when my older kids came home, they brought all their junk food from the dorms. And I was like, oh my gosh, get this out of here. So if you keep it out, that's part of the battle. And then if you decide to have it in the house, I would recommend very, very small bags and even pre-portioning them if you find that it's difficult to just stick to a couple.
Jen, during this time, I know with COVID, right, we've seen a lot of an increase in the use of services like let's say DoorDash, Uber Eats, et cetera, right? Because of the inability or even the convenience of those apps and services. Have you personally been, I guess a lot of people have been contacting you about what to do during this time, right? Whether they're struggling with the food that they have already in their house, or the fact that they find themselves ordering out a lot more, and what has your advice been so far in that space?
Good question. I would say my classes, we talk a lot more about it in the classes, and everyone has shared that that's just become a bigger reality for them. Initially, you know, in the first couple of months of COVID, that was a different story. That was sort of a survival issue. But now that we are pretty steady where we are, you know, I think it's becoming a bit of a habit for people. My advice is our social calendars have been dialed down a lot, and you probably are spending a lot more time at home, rather than spend your money on eating. Not that wait, let me rephrase this. I want to support the local economy and our local restaurants. However, without spending all of your money on DoorDash and things like that, maybe spending a little bit more time trying to cook some foods at home, and really taking advantage of fruits and vegetables and finding ways to incorporate more of those into your diet. Because I think that we tend to reach for foods that we're familiar with, foods that are a little bit more of comfort, and it's best if we can try to stick to more of our plants. I do think it's been a good opportunity. Some of my students have shared that they cook more now, and that has been a good experience for them. So hopefully that can be helpful to people. One thing I will mention, and then I'll go to Charlene, is that some people are now working from home. I'm one of them. And I think that that is disruptive for a lot of people. If you were used to going to work and maybe you had more of a structured environment where you didn't eat until it was either your break time or your lunch time. Now that you're home, you might have access to food more often. So one thing that I've just continued doing is I still pack my lunch every day. I don't really put it in my lunch box, but I do have it packed ready to go in the refrigerator. And I'm really trying to stick to the exact same eating schedule I had when I was going to work. The reason for that is it's just very easy if you're home to, you know, grab an extra snack or have something else. And I just find that it works better for me if I stick to the same schedule. Charlene, you had a question?
Yeah, hi there, Jen. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, Aaron and Guillermo, for putting this together, and the rest of the team. And I agree with you. You're right. I'm an individual who is big on routine, and so it's very easy being home to step away from that. And the dedicated time that we had on campus or, you know, in your workspace is a little different at home. Just out of curiosity, are you seeing more or hearing more questions from students or other clients about maybe becoming vegetarian as far as options versus those who are more, you know, meat eaters? Do you have any advice on that? Personally, I'm both. At times I feel better when I don't eat as much meat, and sometimes I just don't want it. Sometimes I just want a green salad with, you know, no poultry, nothing in there. Kind of just depends on the mood, I guess. But sometimes I just find it to be a cleaner eating and more plant-based. I didn't know if you had any advice on the different types of foods.
That's a great question. I can't say I've heard more of it in relation to COVID or anything, but I do every semester in my classes a Meatless Monday challenge to have students just try for one day, do research on it and what would be some of the potential benefits of going meatless for one day. And I have them try it out. And it's always fascinating to me to see their responses. But every semester it is the same answers pretty much, and I find that people, you know, will say different things. Like a couple of people will say it's too difficult because my family has meat all the time and I'm just used to eating that way. Others will say I really liked the way that it gave me an opportunity to try new recipes. People will say that they felt better by doing that and just opening their eyes to a different way of eating. So when people come to me and they say I'm thinking of going more plant-based or I'm thinking of going vegetarian or something, I just say, you know, take some small steps and see how you feel. It is nothing to just jump into, because chances are you won't stay there if you just jump in and say, okay, that's it, I'm never going there, because you have to think of all the things you do in your life when you eat out, when you go over to someone's house for dinner, all of the different opportunities that you have to make some changes in that way, and without getting too drastic. I live in a household where we have meat eaters, and I'm more of the non-meat eater. So I'm cooking for people with meat, chicken, all of that, and I don't eat it. So it's, and my husband's giving the thumbs up. So the funny thing is that I have to cook 2 dinners every night, but it's, you know, for them, the good part is that I make a lot of vegetables, and I usually make that as our, you know, our main dish, and then I add in a side dish for them of, you know, whatever protein source they want. So if you just sort of think of making the vegetables your main dish, then I spend most of my time on the vegetable recipe and go from there. Whereas usually we're trained to spend most of our time making the meat or the chicken, and then adding vegetable as a, you know, afterthought.
Right.
So I don't know if that helps, but that has been one way that we've shifted our eating. And as a result, we've traded in quantity for quality. So even the meat eaters at home don't eat as much. They eat higher quality and smaller portions.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. That's very helpful.
Good.
What are some of the biggest benefits to eating a plant-based diet? If you had to name like the top 3.
Top 3. Well, I would say that your fiber intake is so important in relation to your gut microbiome and keeping the bacteria happy in your body. I would also, the environmental factor is also very important. And wait, it's hard to choose there. I would say that there's just a lot of research on diets that are more plant-based, whether it's Mediterranean or any type of vegetarian eating, pescatarian, any of those things, that lower incidence of chronic disease. And that's not to say that every type of a vegetarian is healthy. You can be a very unhealthy vegetarian, and a person who says they're a vegetarian but eats all sorts of processed foods. But that's why sometimes I use the term plant-based over that, because I think that it's important to add it thoughtfully and really make sure that you take a complete look of what you're eating, not just saying, I'm going to dump all of my meat products in place of, you know, processed soy products.
Completely agree. So it wouldn't be a meeting of mine if I didn't announce that I'm vegan. You know, there's that joke, how do you know someone's a vegan? They'll tell you.
That's true, Erin.
And so the reason I'm bringing that up is because you made this good point about plant-based diets versus vegetarian and such. Can you maybe outline what these terms mean? So we've got vegan, we've got vegetarian, we have pescatarian, you have even fruitarian.
Oh, yes, all of these different kinds. So vegetarian is kind of an umbrella term, but the way that I describe it, even some people use the word flexitarian, and that's someone who just every once in a while might eat some meat, and maybe they'll eat some animal products, but for the most part, they follow a vegetarian diet. We have lacto-vegetarians who include milk products. Lacto-ovo would be someone who includes milk and eggs. Pescatarian would be someone who includes fish. And sometimes somebody is all 3 of those. They may just exclude like beef and pork and chicken. So and then a vegan would be someone who excludes all animal products and any product that contains anything that comes from animal origin. So nothing with butter, you know, you can go from there. So really, if you look at the research, that most of the research on vegetarian diets has been done with the Seventh-day Adventists, and looking at, and their type of vegetarians that kind of range in all of those. So they've just noticed that there's such a benefit to including all those plants. And even if you look at something like the Mediterranean diet, which does include a small amount of meat and chicken, and of course fish, but it just has it's so predominantly plant-based that I think that's where most of the health benefits come from. So if, like I said, anybody, whether they want to think about becoming a vegetarian or they don't want to think about vegetarian, I always encourage them to try to get more vegetables. It's always my first step. In fact, I'm teaching a class tomorrow night, and that's going to be my message, is just get more vegetables. And how do you do that? Because I think that that's important for anybody.
So that is a good question. How do we do that? How do we get more vegetables? Like for our county specifically, do you have any good recommendations where we can find fruit, vegetables? Do you opt for farmers markets? Are there cheaper places that people can access food?
Is this a leading question? Are you leading me somewhere, Erin? I think I know where you're leading me. Yes.
I mean, you know that I coordinate the pop-up people's pantry and the people's fridge, but I also want to know from your personal standpoint as a grocery shopper, I'm sure you know the best places to find optimal fruits and vegetables. Do you go to the farmer's market? I know that you do a lot of gleaning. We can also talk a lot about that, but for fruits and vegetables, where can we find them in our area?
Well, it's a great question. In fact, I feel like my fruits and vegetable life has been turned upside down because Ubi ended about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. And that was, for those of you who aren't familiar with that, that was a box of vegetables that you picked up every week. And it was from a group of farmers. And it was just really exciting because you never knew exactly what was going to be in the box. And I just loved that. So they stopped doing that locally. And so I relied heavily on Yang's Market, it's on McKee, their fruit and vegetable stand, and they were open from April to October, but they have closed. So my second option is now closed, and I mean they're closed for good. So it was very heartbreaking for me. Now there's other fruit stands in Merced, of course, and Atwater, and so I will probably be having to go to those. And in terms of grocery stores, I try to get, I always shop for things that are in season because that's going to get you the freshest and most nutritious products. People ask me all the time about organic versus non-organic. And I mean, we could spend hours just on that alone. I choose organic when it is local, when it is closer. If I have two products side by side and one was grown in California and one was grown on the East Coast, but it's organic, I'm probably going to choose the one that was grown in California because I think you need to look at that part of it as well. And then in terms of farmers market, I would choose a farmers market any day. It's just not always convenient for me to get there on Saturday mornings. I can't wait for Merced College to get their food or their farmers market back. They had one on Tuesday evenings prior to COVID. And then of course the People's Pantry, which is amazing because they have fruits and vegetables there for anybody. And that's, I would imagine all of it's local, Erin, because it's all donated, right?
Pretty much, but it also depends on how you define local, right? We get some of our boxes from the Farmers to Family Food Box Program.
Yeah.
And so some of that food might be throughout California, not necessarily Merced County. But then a lot of the food, like the food that you pick for us, is from fruit trees from people's backyards in the area. So yeah, some of it's like hyper local. Others, I would say it's probably California based.
Right. And so that's usually how I go about getting mine. I am in the process. There was another food, a CSA that I'm trying to get in touch with, Imperfect Foods. Yeah, Imperfect Foods, that was one of them. That I think will deliver to Merced. There was another one, and I'm looking back into that now that I feel we're a little bit more settled again, at least in terms of schedules. So that's how I do I also grow a lot of my fruits and vegetables, but I know that that's not practical for everyone. So I just love the idea of a co-op. I love the idea of, neighbors sharing fruits and vegetables, which is why I go through my neighborhood and put notes on people's doors and say, hey, I noticed you had an orange tree and you're not picking it. So if you don't want it, can I pick it and bring it to the pantry? So that's usually how I go about it.
Awesome. And someone made a note about the pantry at Merced College. That's fantastic. Yeah, so Merced College has a food pantry. UC Merced, if there's any folks here from UC Merced students, there's a Bobcat pantry on Wednesdays. We also have a USDA food distribution every third Friday of the month. That's actually a collaboration between Merced College and UC Merced, as well as the Merced County Food Bank. And so that's over at Merced College. First come, first serve. Definitely get there early for that one. And then Sierra, if at some point you want to talk more about your experience with Imperfect Foods, that would be great to hear, because I'm very familiar with them, but I've never actually spoken with someone that's received a box. So I would be interested in knowing, like, if you like it, if it's ever too much, do you get items that maybe you'd have no idea what to do with? Maybe just any feedback you have would be awesome.
Yeah, so I actually used to do one of the CSA boxes out in Otwater, Rancho Piccolo Farms, I think that's what it was.
Right.
And they're not doing that anymore, right? I think they're closed. Yeah. And so I was heartbroken. Yeah. So I did that for years and then found Imperfect Foods. And I do really love it. You know, it's very seasonal. And I noticed, like, you know, I don't remember what it was. I was eating something the other day and I was like, oh, Madeira, how cool. Like, it was just, you know, right there. So, I really do love it. And what's kind of cool is you pick your size of what you want and then how often. So every week or every 2 weeks. I do it every 2 weeks. And then I pick the medium box. And then every other Thursday, I get an email saying it's time to shop. And so I can go in and look at what they put in my box. And then if there's things that I don't want, I'll take them out. I can add things because I can look at everything that's available. They kind of just put a random like mix of veggies and fruit. And so I'll just go in and make sure that I've got, you know, not just mostly onions and, you know, garlic, that I have stuff that I can actually like cook with. And then I use a lot of fruit for my sweet tooth. And so I just want to make sure that I've got enough fruit in there. And then what's nice is they recently, because when I first started, it was just fruits and vegetables. And then they recently have changed to including other items. They have actually quite a few vegan items, like vegan cheeses and stuff, and pantry items. And so they used to be Imperfect Produce. Now it's Imperfect Foods because they have a lot more food items. So it's kind of my opportunity to try something new and, you know, maybe a little snack food that I never saw before. For the most part, I use just fruits and veggies. And it's pretty great. Like their delivery is always really spot on. And it is sort of like Christmas, you know, every 2 weeks, because I do get excited for what I have in my box. And I would say on average, it does last pretty much the full 2 weeks, depending on what I choose. On average, I'm probably spending about 25 to 30 for the 2 weeks. So it's not too bad. And the only downside sometimes is that, because you're supposed to be saving things that are too ugly to go into the market, right? Essentially is things that are misshapen or maybe had some scarring on it or something like that. And so I am okay with that, except for occasionally the one item that I get, like I have a butternut squash that I got and it's like this big. So, you know, it's like, I thought, okay, what am I going to do with that? I can't really make soup with it. I'm going to have to put other vegetables in it, even though I had other intentions for it. So you just never really know, because they're giving you items that, you know, other places aren't going to use. So you kind of have to, sometimes I have to supplement. Sometimes I have to go to the grocery store and get vegetables. But for the most part, I have everything there. So it is really nice.
And it's nice, like you said, that you can go in and take things out or put things in. And so I just remembered the Vista also has a box, but and theirs is pretty, I think theirs is preset, the Vista. And that's fine. But when I had looked at it, it had a lot of fruit and I had all of those fruit trees. And it was like, oh, I just cannot take that on. I don't need any more citrus at this time. So, but that's another option if you're looking for something local. So I think it's a really good idea. And like Sierra said, it gives her new ideas. And, you know, even if you just started with a small box and kind of tried some things out and got your pace, because I know that sometimes for people to get a box of fruits and vegetables, if they're not used to preparing fresh, you know, sometimes you've got to use those within a couple of days, depending on what you get. So if you're interested in trying one of these CSAs, start small and then go from there so that you can really make sure you don't waste any food, because goodness gracious, that would be the saddest thing. That's a tragedy to buy it and then waste it. Right, Erin?
Yes. Yeah. Bane of my existence.
Yes. Mine too.
And don't quote me on this, but for some reason, I think I remember them having like a student discount. I would have to look that up again, but that might be the case.
Great. You guys got me in the hot seat. Come on.
I have another question.
Yeah.
That's all right. Sorry, Grelly. Yeah, I was just wondering, since, Sierra talked about some personal things, so I will too. Is it inevitable that we will gain weight as we age? Is there just some bit of weight that we just have to accept that we just are going to enter?
Well, certainly as we age, our lean body mass will decrease. And as your lean body mass goes down, that does affect your metabolism so that you will actually burn less calories. And that is usually what leads to weight gain. It doesn't have to happen. There are some hormonal factors that come into play as well, and they are very difficult to battle, but they are not impossible. And I would say that especially after the age of about 40, usually people will notice that metabolic switch happening, and it starts to accelerate every decade after that. So this is where exercise becomes extremely important, and especially strength training. And I'll speak specifically to women because then they're also battling bones and a decrease in their bone density. So strength training becomes very important because it does help you maintain your lean mass, which will keep your metabolism up and also keep your bones strong as well. So it doesn't have to happen. It very likely will if you don't make adjustments, but with some changes in your activity level and also becoming aware of the foods that you're eating. The foods that you eat in your 20s and 30s are not the same foods that you're going to eat in your 40s, 50s, and 60s. Your diet should evolve as you are getting older because your nutritional needs definitely change. Does that help, Jeanette? And another thing that I was just thinking about in your first question about the cooperative extension, not just behavior changes, but also environment makes such a big difference because we're teaching people what to eat and we're telling them what to eat. But a lot of times, especially in our low income families, their environment is not supportive of healthy eating. And I don't mean their household. I mean a lot of areas that people live in. They don't have access to groceries. They don't have access to that farmer's market. And I think that that's also a crucial piece of why we still see the obesity epidemic as such an issue. Till we start changing the food environment for everyone. Grelly, did you have a question?
Yeah, so mine's kind of something that you guys joked around at the start of the meeting, but I had something that I've been super curious about. So you mentioned like eating worms, but like I know some people have changed to get to eating crickets for higher protein gain. And I was just wondering more about that diet-based lifestyle.
Well, I don't know about it here as much in the United States, but I do know in other countries, crickets actually are used as part of the diet because that's what they have. And they don't have a big source of animal proteins and it's cheap. I guess you can make them taste good. I've heard you can. Cricket flour. I have heard that there's some talk out there of a cricket burger. I think in the United States, it's going to be tough to sell that one, but I'm sure some creative marketers will put it together and figure something out because obviously you wouldn't really know it's a cricket if we processed it enough. But I think as we look at our food environment as a whole, and the way, this goes back to sustainability, and the way that we cultivate food, and really the way that we do it now is not sustainable. So it isn't so far off to be looking at things like crickets, for example. Now, I personally will just stick with my plants, but there are some people out there that might be more willing to add crickets.
Yeah, I was sorry, just to add on to that. I was up a couple of years ago when I was considering going plant-based and just trying to get into a different diet, that caught my attention. And I heard about a farm near San Francisco, a cricket farm near San Francisco, and one of the biggest the positive sides of it was the sustainability side of it. So I'm so glad you mentioned that, but I don't know too much about it. I stopped.
Yeah, and my daughter just sent me a text message and said that mom would make us cricket burgers and not tell us until after we ate it. And she is right, because I have been known to make things out of jackfruit and then not tell anybody what it was until after they ate it. But no, I won't do that to you, my dear.
That's a great question that people might have. Jackfruit, what is jackfruit and how can you sneak it into things? I mean, being the vegan, you can make a ton of stuff with jackfruit, but from a nutritionist standpoint, I'm sure you have some great recipes or ideas for jackfruit.
Yeah, so jackfruit it's a fruit, but it's not our typical sweet fruit. I don't think that we grow it in the United States. I'm almost 100% positive that I think it's Ecuador, and you'd have to look it up, a picture of it, Jeanette. I don't even know how to describe it to you, but when you buy it canned. I buy it canned, and it's already soft, and you basically squeeze all of the water out of it, and then you can shred it. And when you shred it, it takes on the consistency of shredded pork or shredded chicken. So I use that as pulled pork in my house, and I'm trying not to laugh because I have family members on here. And the first time I served it, it was great. Nobody even knew, and until I told them. So now it's a big joke in the family. Everyone's very suspicious when I serve anything that could be shredded. Is this chicken or is it jackfruit? And the good thing is that you could say you were kind of trying to do more plant-based, but you weren't sure you wanted to jump in that bandwagon completely. You could add that to your existing animal protein and use less animal protein, and then add more vegetable to it, or fruit in this case. But it's not a fruit that has a high sugar content, so it's not sweet at all. It's, like I said, just used as sort of a texture replacement. You can buy it canned at Trader Joe's.
Yeah, so it grows in tropical and subtropical parts of the world, like India, Malaysia, Central and Eastern Africa, the Caribbean, Florida, Brazil, Australia, Puerto Rico, Pacific Islands, probably a ton of other places, but tropical for sure.
Do you use it, Erin?
I've had it before in like some pulled pork, vegan junk food kind of things, but I don't tend to opt for it. As a vegan, one reason why I don't eat meat is it just kind of freaks me out. So the things that replicate the taste, I don't like. So I'm not a fan of Impossible Burgers.
Right.
But like it kind of reminds me too much of the actual thing, which is a testimony actually to Impossible Burgers that it does, I think, taste so much like it. But yeah, trying to stay away from that just in general.
Gotcha.
I have another question similar about like substitutions. My mom used to always use TVP, texturized vegetable protein, like in our ground beef to kind of supplement it, right? Make it go further. And we didn't notice or care, right, when eating it when it was seasoned like our taco meat. But I've heard people demonize that. How do you feel about TVP? Or like, I've used jackfruit, and obviously it's a little bit more natural, not processed, but what are your thoughts on it?
TVP originally came out, it's texturized vegetable protein, usually in the form of soy. And, I think it originally came out as sort of an extender, like you mentioned, of meat. It was inexpensive and it could be added to things like Taco Bell, for example, their meat, it would bring the cost down. And the idea was good, but it wasn't really brought forth as necessarily a health advantage. The problem with texturized vegetable protein is it's obviously a highly processed food. And the soy that is generally used in that is not organic or non-GMO. So that brings on a whole other debate. So it really isn't considered a health item. The intention when you use it in place of meat because you're trying to cut back or whatever, it could be that you're trying to do it for a healthy intention, but I don't think that it really is a very healthy item. So I think that when we jump to things, I mentioned a healthy and a non-healthy vegetarian. So when you decide that you're just going to jump in to be a vegetarian and you rely on pre-made foods, like certain burgers or things like that mimic a meat product, that is not necessarily healthier. Yeah, I think there's other things out there that you could use. And I really just encourage people to do more of a whole type of food. And again, emphasizing the plants, but rather than jumping into the processed items. In fact, I had that question from, I think it was my daughter recently who was at the dorms, and she was saying, which is healthier, a plant-based burger or like a hamburger? And I said, it's a really tough question because you have to look really at the sources of both and to decide which way. It isn't just a simple answer. You really need to look at what kind it is and looking at the meat, like, is it grass-fed? Where did it come from? So yes, beyond burgers. I do have an Instagram page that I post vegetable recipes on. And I just do that it's not a personal account. Like, I just use it for my students and anybody who wants recipes. So I can share that, Erin, if you want me to.
That'd be great.
Good question. My go-to plant-based protein source. Jeanette, I actually make my own. I prefer it because I find a lot of the pre-made burger patties that are really salty. But there is one from Costco, and it's like a superfood one that's made with quinoa and vegetables versus a texturized vegetable protein. And I found that to be a good substitute because I was making these plant-based, patties that they were pretty labor intensive. And my son really likes them, which is great, except that he was eating them, often enough that I'd have to make them too often. So yeah, that's it. And I can't remember the exact name, but if you email me, I can probably share that with you. So I will put in the chat my Instagram. And so it's just, like I said, I just post recipes there. That's all I do. And I usually get input from family members. So I have them taste it and then I ask them, would a normal person like this? And then they tell me. So then I'll know if it's really good. Sarah's laughing, but it's true because I'm like, oh, this is great. This is great. I just think this is the best cauliflower ever. And I'll be like, wait, do other people think that's good? So. I know, and we're in between lunch and dinner, and now you're going to want a snack, Charlene.
I am so ready. I'm wondering what I should eat between this conversation. Should I go towards meat? Should I go towards plants?
Oh, make the plants the center of your plate and then go from there. You can add your protein source if you're, want to eat that too. And yeah.
Yeah. It's It's funny because I was a runner for 8 years. So our diet was pretty strict during training, and of course, making sure you'd perform well. It takes training your brain, your mind, everything. And that comes in with nutrition. So that was more, in my prime, I guess, so to speak, much younger. As we get older, we all know our body changes, hormonals, everything kind of does their own thing. But I've always loved fruits and vegetables. I guess sometimes it's a good thing if you already like something where you don't have to reintroduce it to your body or try to enjoy the taste. So it's kind of been easier, for me. Although at times, I mean, who doesn't want chocolate, or like, as we've talked here, a bag of chips, you just have something salty or something sweet, which I think is okay. It's okay to have a cheat day or to give your body some TLC. It's just making sure that majority of your foods are more on the healthier side.
Absolutely.
And sustaining it, I think for a lot of people that I've spoke to, generally, they want to see results and they want to see them now. And it's trying to let them know that it takes time, and I think as Sierra was mentioning earlier, like, that's awesome. So much kudos for you for losing your weight and sticking to your plan, because where some people that are thinner generally, or just normally how their body is, it might be so easy for you not to gain a pound or two, but for someone's body who they gain weight by breathing, that's hard. That's hard. And to keep it off, and not be tempted, because food is comfort.
Right. And food's always going to be there. There's always going to be an invitation out. There's always going to be holidays and birthdays and all of those occasions to eat something extra. And we create extra days to eat extras, actually. So you're right. Allow yourself to enjoy some things like that. But if you can, you mentioned routine. I'm big on routines, because if you get your body used to doing that, then you'll actually start craving vegetables,
Yep, exactly. And introducing them to your family or those with children, because it's very easy to go through drive-through or, make a boxed dinner or lunch, like frozen wise. But I think if anything, you earlier mentioned, Jen, that you had a garden, which I grew for quite some time. I had a lot of herbs. So it was something fun to do, of course. And then I felt like it was healthier because I'm grabbing my vegetables from my own backyard. And it just felt cleaner, to me. So I guess if we could just incorporate that, and with COVID and being home, we've had a little bit more of a work-life balance to be able to cook or venture out. Pinterest is a great website. I use it for different types of recipes personally. So
sure.
And I enjoy cooking, but I think whatever you don't enjoy, you have to, I think we have to get in the mindset to, how are we going to better enjoy this, and figure out what that is.
Yeah. And I think that, just giving it a shot and trying it, just because like I used Brussels sprouts as an example. I did not like those growing up. I mean, I couldn't stand Brussels sprouts, and it was like punishment to make me eat those. And it wasn't really until I was about 30 that I finally mustered up the energy to try a new recipe, and they tasted really good. And it was just really funny to me that, a lot of our experience with vegetables, at one time or another, maybe we didn't grow up with them, or maybe we did, but the way that they were prepared didn't taste good. They might not have been fresh. Maybe they were canned, or, to give them a try. And there's so many different ways to prepare them out there that I just encourage people to just give it a try. And it may take a few different ways to make it before you absolutely can stand it.
Yeah, exactly. And once you find that recipe and master it, then if there's a certain taste you don't like, you can figure out how to mask it, just to get your nutrients, in. And then, personally, I've always ate 5-6 smaller meals a day. I kind of graze more than having 3 larger meals. But that's also helped me.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thank you, Erin, for inviting me for National Nutrition Month.
Thank you. It's a good start. Does anyone have any fun plans for the month? Are you doing anything in your classes, Jen, to celebrate?
No, not particularly. We're all just about nutrition every day, every month. So,
Right.
but I will let them know it's National Nutrition Month, and aren't they happy they're taking my class? So there you go.
Well, just a shameless plug, we're doing a bunch of things at the university, and I'm sure that they would be welcome to join. So on the 18th, we're hosting a panel based on the film Gather, which is about indigenous food systems. And you can find all that information on our social media. And then we are also hosting a panel on the 22nd. These are both at 4 p.m. But on the 22nd, not only this month is it National Nutrition Month, but that day is World Water Day. So we're hosting a panel with some folks that created the film The Fight for Water, which has to do with water rights in the Central Valley. So it's very pertinent to ag and very pertinent to our region. So both of those events can be found on the Food Connect 2020 Facebook and Twitter as well, and all over the other social medias. So if anyone wants to help us celebrate in that way, they're welcome to join us.
Good. Awesome. Well, keep me posted on those. Those sound really, really good. And it was really nice to have everybody join us today. Thank you so much, you guys, for coming. And we'll have to do it again, Erin.
Definitely. I will send out a recording with all of this, and I also have a feedback form in the chat if anyone wants to fill that out. Otherwise, have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, it sounds good. Thank you. Thank you all so much.